welcome to the next episode of DDR, a podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode, we'll be diving deep into Chapter 11 of Homeland, titled Grim Preference, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
And my name is Jeffrey. We are both huge fans of Dungeons & Dragons, so one of the things we're going to be doing is discussing the chapter and how it relates to the tabletop game. You know, there are a lot of different variations out there of D&D, but we talk mostly about 5e because that's the one we play and that's the one we know best.
That's the one we started with. That's the one we know best. Yep. Following along with the show is easy. Just grab a copy of the book, read the next chapter, and tune in every week. But remember, we want to hear your thoughts too, so make sure you share your favorite parts of the show, of the chapter rather, via email at drizzdoneright@gmail.com.
It is really cool to always get an email. You know, it's one of those things that even as I get older on my internet age, seeing you've got mail, which they don't do anymore, but like seeing you have fresh mail and just opening it up is just something.
What is it? What is it? Something magical about it. And then you see it's junk and it's like,
Right? So if you guys continue to flood that email and send us cool things, I don't have to look at all those junk emails so much. They're like, hey, have you thought about selling your house? Like, well, no, I haven't. Or better yet, you know what? You can always be part of the ongoing discussion on our very own Discord channel, Drizzt Done Right Discord. Trying to figure out how to get in it? Going to need one of those pesky little links. Inside of our episode description is going to be the link you need to get into our very own Drizzt Done Right podcast at Discord. Be part of our Dim Light Squad. Bring us something that's entertaining. Bring up something that's relevant to the chapter. We're going to always give you guys a little shout out. And I mean, one thing we're going to do here, it's a little bit different than normally giving a regular shout out. It's not going to be the same happy news we normally do. I just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit of love from the show. So for those of you guys who are already in our Dim Light Squad, you definitely know our friend Scott. And he just shared with us that his cat, lovingly named Guinevere, has passed away in his arms as he was holding her. They were together for over 17 years, and it's like, holy cow. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Now, first off, I know it got me a little choked up. I've got a couple of cats, and they're such important links to the family. You know, they're your friends, they're companions. You go through like adventures and, your downtimes, the turns, ups and downs with them. And I'm so sorry to hear that Guinevere has gone back to the astral plane. Our deepest condolences to you, friend. Losing one that you love is never easy, but we're here for you. And if you just need somebody to share a little bit of sorrow with, and I encourage everybody else on the show, just, give a little love and compassion if you guys get the chance.
Yeah. Actually, I just opened up Discord right before we started recording just to catch up on anything that I missed. And yeah, within the past 12 hours, he posted that, or I guess 24 hours. And I was like, oh my word, I'm going to start recording and just be all teary-eyed and everything. And I was like, oh, it's so sad. But yeah, so something else I wanted to share that was brought up on the Discord, Jaws brought up that the Crystal Shard just turned 35 on March 2nd, just 2 days ago. And
we get the little confetti raining out. We have this little thing.
And that means that the Crystal Shard is just a couple months younger than I am.
Me too, just a couple more months.
So, I mean, 35 years ago was when R.A. Salvatore first wrote his first Drizzt book. That means that within the past 35 years, this man wrote 38 books plus. I'm getting different numbers.
Just like the Drizzt books,
right? Of course, 38 plus Drizzt books, because of course he's done other things as well. But just what an accomplishment! Of course, I say.
Meanwhile, George R.R. Martin has taken 12 years to finish one book. Just saying, there's something to be said for the sheer. Oh, I just lost the word, but scope of the writer's ability to prolific. For an author to be prolific, and R.A. Salvatore definitely is.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, the book Crystal Shard is just 2 months younger than I am. I'm 35, and I have yet to write one book, Jeffrey.
True, but you have been on quite an adventure.
Unless you count the books that I wrote in elementary school, where it was, those books you were required to write. But so, Anyway, a new week this week. How are you doing, Jeffrey?
Doing pretty good. Been doing some home repairs, some home improvement.
Oh man,
Getting my Bob Vila on for all of those listeners who are too young to know who that is. It's a home improvement guy. He used to have a show where he fixes up the house. It's called Your House,
right?
Something like that.
Oh man, it's been so long. Yeah,
Or
totally
This Old
forgot about
House
that.
by Bob Vila. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was able to do a little repair on the dishwasher, and going to be doing a little bit of reinforcing on the new bed frame that we got. And yeah, it's nice to be able to put in a little bit of work on something that's yours.
It's so satisfying when you run that dishwasher after fixing it and it doesn't leak, or it runs as expected, and it's just like, I did that. I did a thing.
Right? That's where you want to cue the music with the choir in the background, like, ah, like flicker the lights a little bit, like I have accomplished greatness. No need to call the professional for this time, and maybe this time only. I was enough to tackle that obstacle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool because again, it's yours. Like doing it for somebody else is always fun. Learning how to do it is sometimes tedious, but a necessary evil. But that time that you get to put it into practice for yourself is it's like, you know what?
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. For me, we've been dealing with a stomach bug here. So
not quite as fun.
Not nearly as fun. Oh man. I'm not going to go into details of that, but it really set my week back quite a bit. We're recording on Saturday here, which is normally my editing day and my day for posting everything online. And that just didn't happen earlier this week because of...
No. And on top of that, you still got the new job going on. So you have all the, all the curveballs being thrown at you early on.
Yep. Had the official starting of training this week. And boy, it's a lot. I actually have my first exam on Monday, so I'm hoping that goes well. I need at least an 80 to pass, an 85 to stay off of the radar, so...
Come on, 90 to 100.
I'm shooting for at least an 86.
You never want to pop up early, especially in a problematic sense.
Correct, yes.
It was one of the things when I went into boot camp, everybody always tell you, and they're like, hey, just so you know, like, if the drill sergeant doesn't know your name, you're winning.
Oh,
so try
absolutely.
to stay under the radar.
Yep.
And I went in, and I mean, for those of you who are on YouTube, allow me to peacock a little bit here. I'm 6'3" and every bit above 250 these days. I was like 225, 230 when I went in. To stay off the radar it's not possible when you see me.
When you're that tall, right?
I didn't know this going in, but I tried. I went in there, and it's going to be smooth, like, all right, I'm going to do everything you ask, no problem. Yep. Then they're doing a body carry, and they're like, well, we need a large volunteer.
Oh no!
Robin.
And there you go,
straight to me. Yep, at day 3, doing a little bit of the field med training. They're like, we need a body. Robbins. Hey guys. So yeah, it's fun times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh boy. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this show started. We're going to start things off with the Drizzt.
The Drizzt is the part of the show where we take a look at this week's chapter and we give you the Drizzt of it. This chapter opens with Zaknafein, the weapons master of House Do'Urden, unsheathing one of his swords. He's admiring the craft of the gray dwarves that forged it. Of course, the craftsmanship is no match for the enchanted magic on the sword. Where other races took pride in their crafting of the weapons, the Drow took pride in how uniquely they enchanted the weapons. Mm-hmm. Of course, Drow weapons were never showpieces, instead strictly regarded as tools for killing. Zak raised his sword up to eye level, and then made his way into the training hall. There, Drizzt was tirelessly training. Zak paused to watch him perform his routines against a training dummy. While Zak watched, under his breath, he uttered, "Can you survive? Have you the heart of a Drow warrior?" Zak looked down at his blade and knew what he had to do. Zak drew his other blade and made a determined walk towards Drizzt, who anticipated maybe like one last jovial session before he leaves for the academy. But he did not understand Zaknafein's intent. Zak wonders if Drizzt's attitude is really just like a farce, putting on that childish display. But evidently realizes it doesn't matter because even if his mother's torments have faded, the academy was going to surely destroy him. So Zak pressed forward and Drizzt fell innocently into a defensive stance. I think this is a really cool part when you go into the chapter because it shows you Zaknafein has such love and respect for Drizzt, but also in that love, there's a little bit of that, should like I step on him and crush him to show mercy.
Right.
And Drizzt is so naive that he's not even able to comprehend Zach might actually want to crush him. Like he
Right.
knows Zach has the ability. Zach will do it to other people, and he always has that question of peril. But I don't know if he's really like, Uncle Zach has ever looked at him yet as that part of who Zach Defane is, that murderous part.
Right.
So then Drizzt sings the praises of Zach Defane as he goes through the motions of deflecting and parrying, boasting the greatness that he's going to achieve for the Academy, for the honor of Zach Defane and of House Do'Urden. A few desperate deflections led Drizzt to realize that Zach Defane was upset as he heard him growl, "Are you so sure of yourself?" Drizzt declared that he is a fighter, a Drow warrior, and Zach Defane scoffs at him. He calls him a mere dancer.
I love that.
Right? It's not even emasculating. It's just like taking the wind right out of the balloon. Because it's like, I'm a fighter. Yeah. No, you're a performer. Like, ooh, shoot. He's like, you're a mere imposter, a pretender to a title that you cannot comprehend. So then Drizzt tries to go in the offensive, but Zach Defane would not be deterred. He pressed on with the lesson. Do you know the emotions of murder? Have you reconciled yourself to the act that you committed? Zach goes on to speak at Drizzt, more at him than to him, saying, the pleasure of plunging your sword into the bosom of a high priestess, to see the light of warmth leave her body while her lips utter silent curses to your face. Or have you heard the screams of dying children? Zach Defane again brings up the murder of the children, this time not to mention House DeVere again, but you also get the feeling that you can just like replace that name with anybody else because the scene never changes.
Right.
Like 400 years of moving up the ladder of houses and snuffing out the enemies of House Do'Urden, which all too often ended with the screams of children, as all witnesses had to be removed, as we've learned. Like that's the scope of that moment is huge.
Yeah.
Even though it's only like a brief,
a sentence, a couple. Yeah. Just a couple. Yeah. Yep.
You've never heard them, have you, dancer? He asked Drizzt. Come then, he beckoned. Come and claim your second kill. Zach Defane prompts Drizzt to murder him slowly and viciously so that his screams may haunt Drizzt forever. He demands proof that Drizzt is the true warrior or Drow warrior that he claims to be. Zach Defane notices the hesitation in Drizzt and laughs at him, prompting him that if his aim was glory, then it lies but a strike away. If he can claim the life of the mighty Zach Defane, then he will surely have such a reputation that will precede him in the Academy. They will whisper his name as they pass. Drizzt Do'Urden, the boy who slew the most honored weapons master in all of Menzoberranzan. Drizzt condemns him, but Zach continues to chide him. He's telling him to be so quick, not to be so quick to claim a title that he cannot begin to understand. Drizzt pressed forward in a fury that he'd never known, not to kill, but to defeat Zach Defane and steal those taunts from his mouth. I think that's a really cool line when you think about a battle because it's so physical, right? Like back and forth, the stabs, the parries, but his goal is to steal the taunts from Zach Defane's mouth.
Yeah.
Like winning is not enough. He needs to be able to do it to the point where like, bragging rights are a little bit different than that, but similar.
Right.
Drizzt was brilliant. He was relentless, spending more time on the balls of his feet than the heels. But Zach Defane had a plan yet again and could stand the delay no longer. He threw out this lazy thrust that forced Drizzt to just slap it away. And then Drizzt slides inside, anticipating victory. But Zach took advantage of the distraction, and he slips his free hand into his belt and grabs the small magical sphere. Drizzt kept a measured offense because he's well aware of Zach Defane's duplicitous nature. Zach has had several instances in previous sparring sessions where he has feigned an opening only to capitalize on Drizzt. So you know he's being very cautious here.
Yep.
So even though he's struggling with what he must do, Zach Defane managed to use his remaining sword to parry Drizzt and force him into a feigned checkmate. So Drizzt pulls up his killing blow just short of Zach's throat. Goes, I have you, cries the young Drow. And Zach slams the sphere down right after closing his eyes. Drizzt is caught by surprise by an explosion of light beyond anything that Drizzt could ever have imagined. Like a small sun inside of this
just
world.
like a star in the room.
Yeah. It's like Zach took advantage of Drizzt's handicap and quickly disarmed him and brought him to heel. Drizzt was blinded and taken off his feet and could feel Zach Defane stalking him, but he couldn't understand why. He was forced to remember earlier lessons and divorce himself from his sight, using his other senses to feel the incoming threat. In the last moment, he caught a parry that felt hard enough to split his skull. Zaknafein was surprised as he tried again, and quickly impressed as Drizzt blocked him again. Zak fell into forms that could slice down a normal warrior quickly, but Drizzt continued to fight him off, screaming, "Treachery! Do you so hate to lose?" And it's like, that's, if you watch any like anime or samurai fighting, I always feel like that's the part where they blindfold the master warrior,
Right?
and like now he's got to use his Zen power to block everything away.
Yep.
And I was like, it's just such a neat scene because Zak is almost, I think, at this point committing to try to kill Drizzt. Like he knows he's gonna do it, and he's just gonna kill him. And he's so surprised that Drizzt stops him the first time.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, fine, you got lucky, and tries again. And he's like, now I'm curious. Hold on. And instead of trying to like hack away and end it quickly, he starts trying to see like how well he can fight while handicapped, while blinded.
Yeah.
Zaknafein tells him, to lose is to die. You can win 1,000 fights, but you can only lose one. Zak wondered if he should do Drizzt the mercy of striking him down now with one fatal blow. But instead, he threw his saber to the side and grabbed his son by the collar, dragging him to his feet as the Dwemer of the enchanted pebble faded. A trick of Lolth's clerics, Zak explained. Always they keep such a spell of light at the ready. He admitted that he's used it against more than a few of them. Drizzt still believed it to be treachery, but Zak told him that he would soon learn. It is their way. Drizzt questioned Zak if he enjoyed killing Drow, that he would have killed Drizzt himself? Zak paused and said, but I did not. He told him that he's allowing him to go live and go to the academy, where being naive will earn him a dagger in the back because he can't accept the nature of his people, or he will change and truly become one of those people. And Drizzt was hurt. He turns and walks away. Zak bellows after him as he goes to go and seek his glory at the academy, the glory that he wants so badly. But with such skills comes such great responsibilities. Is that sentence trademarked? I didn't steal it verbatim from Stan Lee. So Diamond comes down the next morning, and Drizzt has slowly left the training room, wondering if Zak's going to say goodbye, but also knowing that he's not. He had so many questions spinning in his head, but not answers. His head was reeling, but Diamond reminded him that time was growing short, and he must not be late for his first day at the academy. As they walked outside, Drizzt was captivated by the sights and lights of outside, wondering what this place really was. Well, Diamond overheard him and told him that it's the real world. You'll learn of it at the academy. Second boy, he laughs. Drizzt shrugs in resignation and followed him over the balcony and down the stairs. Watching from the shadows lurked the creeper Alton Devere, quietly sitting on the side of a mushroom. Lone witness left of House Devere, he ran through memories of his childhood as his house had grand ambitions. He looked at all of that quite differently these days. His matron mother, Jennifer, had been the youngest ruling matron among the families, with potential that seemed unlimited. Then she aided a gnomish patrol, used her Lolth-given powers to hinder the Drow that ambushed the little people in the caverns. All because Jennifer desired the death of a single member of the attacking Drow party, a wizard son of Menzo Berensen's house, third highest house, House Devere's next target. The Spider Queen didn't like that matron Jennifer to murder the Drow because they were dark elves. It's like the butcher the sentence a little bit. They didn't like that she used the gnomes as the instrument of the murder of the dark elves.
Right.
Because the gnomes were one of the worst enemies of the Drow in the Underdark. This task has caused House Devere to fall out of favor with Lolth, and it doomed them. He contemplated what the house must have been responsible for 20 years of his life, and now that he knows it, he realizes that the 20 years did nothing to diminish his rage.
That was a very interesting last scene there.
Yeah.
It was just a very tense chapter, and then you get to this last scene, and it's just like, oh man, he's watching. He knows, and he's just fixated on House Do'Urden, and it's like, you were told, take no action. It's just like, what is he gonna do?
Yeah, no, and it's another thing too. When we first started this book, and you had talked about maybe the empty eyes of Menzo Berensen. It's a really cool thought. Like this action is going on wherever it happens. And you've got to think that there's always somebody who's shrouded or blended in somewhere who's watching it go by. Because really, it's just a cavern and it's not that big.
Right. Yeah.
It's a massive place and it's sprawling, but it's really hard to be sneaky among a bunch of conniving, sneaky people.
Yep. All right. Awesome summary there. Awesome Drizzt. Let's move. Awesome the Drizzt. I was like, hold on. Let's go ahead and talk about our favorite parts in the dim light reel. The dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter and dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. So we actually already talked, you covered it pretty well in your Drizzt, but I mean, my favorite part was definitely the lessons that Zach had to teach Drizzt while they were fighting. Just, they're fighting, they're putting everything into this sparring match, but then at the same time, they're having this conversation that just adds to the whole situation, and I just loved that. So my dim light this week is part of that conversation during their sparring session. So Zach asks Drizzt, "Are you so sure of yourself?" Drizzt went on the offensive, yelling, "I am a fighter. I'm a Drow warrior." Like some, I don't know, sounds almost like a
petulant child just yelling back at you like, "No, I'm a superhero."
Let's see. To which Zach responds, "No, you are a dancer, an imposter." So this seems to really strike a chord with Drizzt. He ends up going on the offensive, but then Zach continues his lesson. "Ah, the pleasure of plunging your sword in the bosom of a high priestess. To see the light of warmth leave her body while her lips utter silent curses in your face." It was actually up until this moment that I thought I knew what was happening. But then, I just thought that he was looking to kill Drizzt to prevent him from becoming a cold-hearted killer by going to the academy. So I kind of saw this as, Zach is trying to kill him sort of out of it's sort of like a mercy killing. But the next thing that he says actually started to flip my mind the other way, though. So Zach continued, "Or have you ever heard the screams of dying children?" And it's like, oh man, here he goes again, bringing up these
got that 1,000-yard stare suddenly where he doesn't see you, he's looking beyond you.
Right.
Yep.
So he continues, how loud those screams. They echo over the centuries in your mind. They chase you down the paths of your entire life. He eventually starts taunting Drizzt, "Come then and claim your second kill." And at this point, I'm starting to think, before it was I thought that he was trying to kill Drizzt as a mercy killing sort of thing, but it's now, hold on, I just lost my spot. Zach wants to kill Drizzt, what I was starting to think was that Zach wanted Drizzt to kill him so that he isn't tormented any longer by these screams from Drow children. And the DeVere children let out their screams about 20 years ago, but Zach made a point to say that the screams echo over centuries. And it's you touched on it in the Drizzt, but it was at that moment, it was hold on. How many House DeVeres have there been? How many House DeVeres was Zach a part of destroying?
And it's really kind of cool when you think about it through the eyes of the young Drow, right? We're just starting to know their world maybe a step faster than Drizzt is. Because we get to see it through his eyes. But we also get to see it through a few other visages up until this point.
Right.
But really, we're still newcomers to this world. We think we know Renzo Parenzen because we know some of the houses. We've seen some Drow justice. We can name the 3 academy spots, right? We had all the cool people. We know the ones to know. But really, we have no idea. We're still, a third of the way into this book, and we're still just getting to learn like he is. We have that same naivety. And so when you're learning that in the conversation, in the lesson, it is kind of cool to think about it from that point of view.
Yeah, so just like how many houses, how many Drow children was he at least partially responsible for killing? You know, maybe he wasn't the one with the sword in his hand, but we saw with DeVere, he helped like find them and then just like kept walking. So how long has Zach been fighting to kill priestesses at the cost of young Drow lives? You know, he loves to kill those high priestesses whenever they take out a house, but then it's like, is it just kind of collateral damage? Like, I got to kill the high priestesses, but unfortunately at the cost of these young Drow. And at this point, I feel like at that moment in the chapter, it was just kind of like, oh man, has he finally cracked? Has he finally had enough? Is he like, because like he eventually is just like, come on, take your second kill. And then it's, you know, basically like a Sith type situation or a Faceless One type situation where it's like, you kill me, you take my spot. That kind of thing. And, you know, that's got to be at least a little enticing to Drizzt.
I took it almost like more of an intimidation tactic.
Okay.
Like,
well, that's how it eventually.
When he calls him a dancer, I thought it was neat because earlier on we learned that they talk about the surface elves and they're like, oh, they just dance under the sun, right?
Oh
and
man!
So like calling him a dancer, he's like, you're so not even a Drow. You're like those people.
You're like a surface elf.
It's kind of how I took it, right?
Oh
and I was
man,
like,
I didn't even put that together.
Wow. So it's almost like he's just, in my mind, like emasculating him so far. And he's like, oh, you're a great warrior. Oh, you know what you're doing? Here, look, I won't even fight you. You can have everything you want. Go ahead and stick me. All you need to do is be a real Drow. Be a real Drow. Assassinate me. There's no one looking. Go ahead. Take it. It basically just shaming him into knowing who he really is by saying, like, you know, there's no way you're going to do it. Like every time you see a movie and they're like, you got a gun. Like, you're not going to shoot. Like, he's basically just trying to, like, you know, make Drizzt feel so small in that moment. Like, you are nothing that you think you are. If you were, you could stab me. Go ahead, do it.
Man, Jeffrey, I am so glad that I decided to read this book with you because
I might be wrong, but that's how I took it.
No, that's totally how you're supposed to take it, and I just totally read right over that without ever thinking about it. But oh man, no, that's crazy.
That's why they're the parts of the chapter that we focus on, folks.
But yeah, that whole scene was just had your adrenaline pumping, but also just like tugs at your heartstrings a little bit because it's like, no, you guys should be best friends, and it's like, but anyway, that's my dim light for this week. What do you have this week for us, Jeffrey?
I went with the Fall of House DeVere. Now it's gonna sound a little weird because we've already witnessed
that chapter 2.
It was, but it's that small part at the end of this chapter where we run into Alden.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that had such an impactful moment on this chapter that I really wanted to highlight that. So I know it's a small amount of words. I feel like it just has a big impact. But when we started this book, we knew that House DeVere had fallen out of favor with the Spider Queen. And now we find out why. You had asked before, do we know what they did to incur the wrath of the Spider Queen so that their spells weren't listened to?
Yeah.
As we went into that second chapter, this is where we find out why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of huge. It almost feels like it's just an afterthought in the chapter, but when I read it, it slammed into place like one of those puzzle pieces. You know, like one of the middle ones that are really tough to connect.
Right.
It's like we know that Drow justice is unforgiving, and that it is also, say, perhaps guided is the right word, by the ruling council. It's a risk to put yourself in their sights. So assassinations are encouraged on an individual level as well as a house level. So House Do'Urden was able to take advantage of the stumble of House DeVere and assassinated them.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward, much like Dynan assassinated Nalfine opportunistically and promoted himself to First Boy. So House DeVere was trying to assassinate a wizard, a son of the third house, who was also part of the patrol party that was out there trying to help secure the borders of Menzoberranzan against creatures and foes like gnomes. Mm-hmm. Matron Jennifer, she used her magic to aid the gnomes, and we're led to believe that they killed the patrol of Drow. And they did all of this to make sure that she got that one person who was her intended target.
Mm-hmm.
So House DeVere wasn't punished for killing a wizard, wasn't punished for killing a Drow, and it certainly, wasn't punished because it killed a party of Drow. It's punished because they were cast out of favor because they used their gifts to benefit the gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
So even though the gnomes most likely died, lost members as well, the fact that they benefited by being able to kill the Drow because the Drow let them is like this huge taboo. So
Right.
Matron Jennifer dooms the house to fear. So the question I had is like, if Matron Jennifer allowed, say, a hook horror instead of the gnome to devour the party, would that have been okay, you think?
Probably. Maybe that's a little better, seeing as the Grey Dwarves are like the worst, or no, not Grey Dwarves. The gnomes are one of the worst enemies, right?
Right. So it's like, so if it was just some other regular
Like
denizen creature who wasn't as cognizant, didn't
Right.
worship a different god, if they'd come in and she had cast heavy sleep on all of them, and the hook horror comes along and just nom 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 nom
Right.
nom, eats them all up, does Loth go, smart move?
Right. Because, I mean, the way I don't know, the first thing that comes to my mind is when they decide, well, when the ruling council decides to take out the house that didn't, I forget the names of the house that didn't successfully eradicate the other house. You know
House Tekindui.
House
Yep.
Tekindui, right? They summoned.
They tried to get House Firth, I think it was.
Right, yeah. They summoned a bunch of denizens from the lower plane. It's like, I mean, is that any different? To use some other creatures to do your bidding?
I didn't think so.
But I guess gnomes are a big no-no.
Yeah. And so that's enough to doom your house, though. Think about that. Like,
yeah.
That one moment. So like this razor thin line between blessing and destruction really makes you realize the chaotic nature that serving such a deity would mean.
Yeah.
You know, the fourth strongest house in Menzoberranzan was allowed to be assassinated because they used the wrong tool once. You know, it's like sitting down for a dinner and having 4 forks and finding out you use your seafood fork and the salad fork, and now you're losing a hand. Excuse me? Like, that's a little rough. You know, it's also kind of neat to realize, though, that while Alden's memory is kind of used to invoke almost a little sympathy for his house, he's also literally admitting that his house was in the midst of an assassination and was planning to destroy Oblodra, which was the third most powerful house of Menzoberranzan. So even while he's trying to evoke sympathy, there remains this undercurrent of viciousness that pervades the Drow culture.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy because he's like, oh man, I can't believe what happened, that we were taken out of our prime while we were trying to assassinate those people in front of us. Somebody came along and assassinated us. What are the odds?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it says, not only did he carry this flame for 20 years, it's just getting worse. He's so zealous in that regard. I was like, you know what? That's just a small part of the end of the chapter, but really it's got a lot of implications.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
So now, that's my dim light. Where would you like to go delving?
For those on the YouTube, let's go over there. All right, the Dungeon Delve is the part of the show where we link this chapter to our favorite tabletop RPG. This week, there weren't too many magical items or skills being used. I mean, there was a lot of skills, I guess, in the fighting techniques, but we've already talked about combat quite a bit and actions and things like that. So I noticed in the beginning of the chapter, when Zach was admiring the craftsmanship of his Duergar crafted sword, the sword itself is described as possessing exquisite workmanship and having wondrous detail. You know, whenever I stumble upon a video online showing how someone crafts a sword or something similar, I always get sucked in. There's something about molten metal being poured and red hot metal being like shaped on an anvil that just draws me in. And so it's not something that I am able to do. I have not been trained that way. I don't have the talent. I don't have the equipment. But did you know that there are rules for crafting in 5e?
Do you think that Sarah would allow us to put a forge out in your backyard?
I would love that.
I'm not saying that we'd make a lot of table hinges, but every once in a while we could get together and melt down something and come.
So Jeffrey, when I started talking about a sword, did you think I was going to be talking about crafting, or did you think I was going to be talking about the sword itself?
No, I would have gone with the sword.
So
I think crafting is such a neat way to look at part of D&D, because everybody thinks, again, that D&D is nothing more than, well, not everybody, let me apologize.
Right.
A lot of broad people who are uninitiated to the game really think that D&D is nothing more than stab and slash, right? Like building a murder bot. How is your guy cut down the other guy? But I think the people that spend time and live inside that world, there's so many small nuances that you can really take advantage of and immerse yourself into. And so I think crafting is really a neat way of looking at it.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I got so into it, and it's something that I unfortunately don't use enough. Like when I think it was back in like 2014 when 5e was first coming out, it wasn't about the combat for me. It was looking at it like, man, I am... Sorry if you can hear my kids. They're right over in the kitchen, just really loud. But D&D is just a world that you get to immerse yourself in, and you can live in it. And it's like, hey, if you want to go do this, you can go do that, or at least attempt to. If you want to learn how to craft something, you can do that. And that was one of the things that really drew me into it. And so, yeah, crafting. Page 187 of your player handbook, next time you have it in front of you. There's a whole section of downtime activities that PCs are able to partake in when they're not adventuring. But crafting is just one of those downtime activities. And so the way that crafting works is, again, it is a downtime activity. So it's something where, if you're really rushing to get a quest done or something, you're probably not sitting around like, we're just going to take a week and, rest or whatever. That doesn't happen too often with like huge campaigns. But if you are proficient in using a tool, depending on what those tools are, you're able to make the corresponding item. So if it's like, if you're proficient in smith tools, then you're able to craft weapons and armor. If you're proficient in, what other tools are there? I know I don't want to give the ones away that I'm planning on using, but insert tool here, and depending on what that makes, those are the type of things that you can make. So, but I should say you can only craft non-magical items this way. I wasn't able to, I didn't look too hard, but as far as like enchanting things, other than using spells, if there's some other rule for that, we'll save that for a day later. But in one day, in-game, you are able to craft one or multiple items totaling a market value of up to 5 gold pieces. All right, so that's the general rule. Every day you are able to craft something worth 5 gold pieces as long as you are proficient in using those tools, and it has to be a non-magical item. One little tidbit here is that you need to use up at least half the cost in raw materials. So if you're crafting something worth 5 gold pieces, then you must expend 2.5 gold pieces worth of raw material. Of course, the item you're trying to make, if it costs more than 5 gold pieces, you just need to work multiple days. So here's my for instance. Suppose you want to make a longbow. You want to craft a longbow. The longbow has a market value of 50 gold pieces. Knowing that 5 gold pieces a day is what you're able to craft, it's going to take 10 days to make it. Seeing as longbows are typically made of wood, you would need to be proficient in woodcarver's tools, I would say, but I could see someone making an argument for being proficient in carpenter's tools. They're not the same, but it's similar enough that, you might be able to make a rudimentary, I almost said crossbow, longbow out of using your carpentry skills. But anyway, that means, so we have 10 days, it's 50 gold pieces. It's also going to cost you 25 gold pieces in raw materials.
What if wood is just really on sale that week?
I would say that is up to the discretion of the DM.
Like I'm in a forest. Can I just hack down my wood?
And that's the thing. So your DM could allow you to purchase the materials needed, but you could also...
in essence of just going to a place to purchase it from a shop and make it yourself, that would work in this formula.
Right.
Is what you're saying. Okay.
Or the DM could say like, well, there's a forest out there that possesses... that it's a bunch of trees of the highest quality wood, and it's like, hey, you can go gather some. That might take
I
an
like that
extra
because
day or
like
so.
then you'd have to throw in like a nature check to make sure he finds the right tree. Like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I always loved the idea of crafting in D&D. Like I said, it's something that really got me hooked into it. It's like, oh man, what else can I do? Like, you can own land, you can make money by owning a farm and stuff like that. Like all of these things, but crafting was one of the things that really like got me sucked in. And at the time, I wasn't actually playing in any games because this was back when I was first learning about it. And it was just like, oh man, you could do this and do that. This is so cool. But yeah, unfortunately, our current campaign that we play, there's a little more hustle needed. We're not just hanging out in a town. I mean, I guess we did a little bit back when we first started, but that town is no more. And perhaps we'll get there eventually.
It got blown up.
Yeah.
Fire.
But not to the fault of the party.
Totally innocent.
All right, so that's my Dungeon Delve this week. Jeffrey, what do you have for us?
For me, my dungeon, there's a lot of D's here. My dungeon delve is the Dweomer that Zach Nefane used to blind Drizzt, stunning him and bringing up an abrupt end to their fight. A Dweomer is a magical aura that is on an enchanted item. In terms of origin, the Dweomer means witchcraft in Old English, and it derives from the Old Norse term Dvergmal, which literally means dwarf talk. So it refers to secret knowledge of magic among the original Norse dwarves that they kept amongst themselves. And I'm not sure where that's based on. I know when I was younger, I had a book in Norse magic, and the way that they believe about dwarfs and gnomes, it's really kind of cool. So I don't know if he took from that lore, or like if D&D has anything to speak specifically to that, or if they just kind of made their own. But I found that kind of interesting. So the spell that I think it might have been enchanted with was I went and chose Light of Blinding.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah.
It creates an uncomfortably bright flash of light that affects each creature in a 15-foot square radius, or 15-foot radius sphere, not square.
Nice.
It's centered on you, and then each creature must make a dexterity saving throw or be blinded for the duration.
Would you be counted as a creature? Casting?
I don't know, because I think you would be able to just close your eyes, right?
Yeah,
like Zach Nefane knew that he was throwing it, so he couldn't be caught by surprise.
Yeah, I guess it would be the surprise factor, right?
I'm not really sure. But at the end of each turn, the affected creature can make a Constitution saving throw. This is a second-level abjuration spell, so I feel like it'd be common enough that Zach Nefane would be able to procure a few of them without drawing any kind of like unwanted attention to himself. It's not like he was walking down to the fish market and trying to buy a 12 gauge. Like,
right.
I saw a guy was this tall, look like this. When you consider like how Drow see how infravision works, then even though it's a simple spell, you can imagine the effectiveness that it has.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of gameplay, when Zach Nefane drops the Dweomer, he has his eyes closed and catches Drizzt by surprise. So Drizzt would have to roll his dexterity saving throw. What do you think, at a disadvantage because he's caught by surprise, or do you think that the closed eyes is the advantage for Zach? Because it's one of the two. I don't think you get both.
Yeah, if you don't have sight, I would think that you would have disadvantage on dexterity saves that rely on sight. Right?
So then I would think maybe that Zach Nefane gets advantage on his roll if it is
right
as well.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So Drizzt would then have to do a dex save. In the story, he's blinded, so that would mean that he failed, right? So his attack is dead in the water, that knife that he's got leveled at Zach Nefane's throat.
Yeah.
A full 6 seconds would go by until he can make a first Constitution saving throw, just to hope to recover for his next move. So this means, like, at a minimum, Zach's got 2 more actions that he can get in and do something to Drizzt while he has really no defense. And so this opening is more than enough for a warrior as talented as Zach Nefane to exploit it to his advantage for the finishing blow. We see that Drizzt blocks the incoming attack, so he still manages to defend even though he's blind. So what I was thinking is, do you think that that would result more because Zach Nefane rolled poorly on his attack roll, or because Drizzt's recovering on his saving throw?
It could be a combination.
because he's still blind, and that's what kind of got me. Is like he still didn't have sight, right, when he's blocking.
Right. Maybe there's a passive perception going on there as well. Maybe like he heard that. Well, no, Drow are so light on their feet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm half convinced Zach probably rolled low. He got a nat 1 there.
It's the fact that he was still blinded, which was got me. So I feel like Zach just rolls really, really poorly on his attack rolls and can't overcome Drizzt's DC. And we've all been there before, right?
Just you last night with 2 nat 1s in a row.
Yeah, that was my Constitution saving throw too, right?
Yep.
So I rolled a nat 1 on my Constitution, and I was like, "Oh, but wait, we have inspiration."
Yep.
So I tried to use that and re-roll the die, and I re-rolled another one.
Nat 1.
Sometimes the dice are not with you, my friends. So, we've all been there. Got a nice, healthy advantage, and then you get skunked by the dice.
Yep.
These Dwemer would be quite the advantage when fighting anyone who's sensitive to light. Like a few seconds can be a couple of actions, and that can all too easily be the difference between surviving an encounter or having to re-roll a whole new character.
Yep. Now we know that Drizzt just managed to block that. I mean, it would have been a death blow. A sword right to the head. Yeah. He would have been re-rolling a new character. All right. Well, is that about it for the dungeon delve? I guess
that takes us out of the dungeon.
Yup, and that puts us at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for listening. Remember that if you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Also, make sure you are getting the most out of this podcast. Pick up a copy of the book and read along with us.
Have you realized at an early age that you are just too awesome to be bothered to physically read the book? Excellent. Just download a copy of the audiobook and listen to it during your commute, at work, in the metaverse, wherever. When you finish chapter 11, go ahead and shoot us an email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com, or you can log on to our Discord, link in the description, and join in on the discussion. Become a member of the Dimlight Squad. Remember, we love to hear from you. And also, remember, if you guys feel like supporting the show, sending a little digital love, we do have the link on the episode description that allows you to make donations that we'll use to accelerate the building process of this show that we're creating with all of you in the Dimlight Squad. Never feel obligated, but know you guys are always appreciated.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast, but now it's time to say goodbye.
And it's never easy to say goodbye, so I say farewell, play fair, be well.